Tim and I met in an English literature class our junior year of college, and we've been together the 10 years since. While he ended up going into IT, I stayed in the liberal arts track and ended up doing non-profit work after college when I realized I didn't actually want to be a school teacher. Just to say that we always assumed he'd out-earn me by a considerable margin. Though when he made more, I always insisted we split things evenly to avoid potential resentment down the road. I've had sort of a non-linear career path, but ended up switching to the corporate world. To make a long story short, my liberal arts degree and time doing non-profit work gave me a lot of skills that enable me to really excel professionally in some more niche areas. I recently started a new job as a consultant, making way more than I'd ever anticipated. When I got the offer, I told Tim that the pay was amazing, but he didn't ask about the actual amount, and I didn't want to be braggy about it, especially since I was fairly sure it was above his current income. Well, we just put in an application for a new place, and in the process of having to submit our pay stubs, it's become obvious that I make roughly 30% more than he does now. I expected him to think that was cool, since he's a feminist and has always been super supportive of my career. But instead he started to make increasingly harsh jabs about how I cheated the system to get where I am. That no English Lit major makes more than a cybersecurity professional without cheating somehow. His major point is that I got my first job out of nepotism, which set me up to trample more qualified people who didn't have the same advantages. It's true that I got my first post-college job after being referred by a sorority sister, but it was for non-profit work making $22K /year, not exactly at somebody's daddy's firm. He also points out that at my first corporate job, I snagged a big promotion after volunteering to take on starting up the company's diversity /equity /inclusion program, and I'll admit that were I a white man, it's highly unlikely I would have been able to be the face of the eventually high-profile diversity program. Tim also notes that I was awarded a small college scholarship for being a promising female writer, when no such scholarship existed for males. But all that said, I still don't feel like I cheated the system, and it makes me angry to listen to him joke about it. Especially since I grew up blue-collar and worked full-time while going to school full-time to afford my degree. I reached a breaking point yesterday when he made a crack about how the new / first woman on his team is an obvious diversity hire. I told him that his jokes about women cheating the system to get ahead aren't funny or guy talk ribbing, as he says. They make him sound like an insecure little boy. He told me I was being a naive Karen, and we haven't really talked since yesterday. I am part-timing in an IT company that is very close-knit. My boss Steven and his wife were always sweet. It was my first month and it was my boss's birthday week. So he and wife Melissa were kind enough to include me in this fancy dinner they were taking everyone to. A week prior to the dinner, Melissa added everyone to a group chat and asked whether we had any suggestions on where to eat. I told her that I am fine with anything as long there are vegetarian options available, or at least chicken. They brought their daughter Steph to the dinner, and she is a sweet little girl. Now Steph was really interested in me, and she kept on asking me questions about how I look the way I look. Now I am short, 5 feet, but can be somewhat deemed as fit to today's generation. I was transparent with her and told her that I don't restrict myself to certain foods but rather eat everything in moderation. Plus I have a plant-based diet and home-cooked meals, so that helps, and I also lift weights. Now Melissa overheard our conversation partially. She pulled me aside and told me that Steph was recovering from eating disorder, so she encouraged me to be honest with her and not lie to her, and not to order anything that screams diet. When I saw the menu, there were little to no vegetarian options available. It didn't have anything for me. I was very disappointed and made a comment that, oh wow, there are no vegetarian options. Melissa chimed in and said that eating meat once in a while won't affect my weight. Now, when I say plant-based diet, it's not that I don't eat meat, but I only eat chicken maybe once a week as a side dish, and certain types of fish occasionally, but other than that I mostly eat vegetarian dishes. My food habits are not for my weight, but for my religion / culture. It has nothing to do with my weight. When the waiter came in, I was still glued to my menu when all the others had already ordered. Melissa said that, oh, she will have the duck too, and I interrupted and said that no, I will have the garden salad. I hate salads, but there were no other veg options. Melissa got quiet. After a few minutes she told me that I shouldn't have lied and lead on her daughter if I was going to order a skinny salad and starve myself. She said that I am just like those IG influencers who lie to impressionable young girls about their food habits and bodies, and I just proved that by ordering a salad after giving her daughter a "don't restrict yourself" speech, and I probably triggered her eating disorder. I tried to explain that I only ordered a salad because there was no other option in the menu for me, but then she said that I should have just sucked up and eaten the duck as it isn't going to affect my weight, but then again, I corrected that it is a religious thing and not a diet thing. She said that if I eat chicken then obviously I would eat other animals too, and I was just putting up an act. It was horrible. She completely tore me down and I immediately left. I have waited tables for the last 3 years. During my shift last night, a group of 4 women in their late 20s came in. They were a pleasure to have as customers. They ordered 4 of our house cocktails to start with and then went over the menu for their entrees. Then I was on my way back to their booth with the drinks on a tray. I walked by the back side and overheard one of them talking about how she was 14 weeks along. When I rounded back, they were talking about the same topic and it was clear to me that she was pregnant. I figured her having 1 drink wasn't a big deal. They ordered their entrees and I went off to handle other tables. About 5 minutes later, they called me over again and asked for another round. At this point I started getting concerned, but I took the order and cheerfully said I'd be right back. This time, I went to the bartender and asked him to make one of them a virgin cocktail. He was confused, but since he's a good friend of mine, I told him to just trust me. A few cocktails later, hers strictly virgin, they started getting rowdy, and Mrs. Pregnant Woman was also getting into it. I figured that since she didn't notice, things were okay. The problem came when I took them their check, and they asked to split the bill at the register. When Mrs. Pregnant Woman got to the counter, I saw her cocktails were marked with virgin. My bartender had edited each in the system for inventory. It was too late for me to edit them back, so I just had her pay, hoping that she wouldn't look at the receipt. They all thanked me and left, leaving a generous tip in the process. They were talking in the parking lot for the next short while, presumably waiting for an Uber. Several minutes later Mrs. Pregnant Woman came back and asked what "virgin" on the receipt meant. I fessed up that it meant non-alcoholic. She blank stared me for a few seconds and then asked if she had ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I said no, but told her that I assumed she wanted one seeing as she was pregnant. It was a lame lie and I'll admit it, but she looked me in the eye and asked me to return her part of the tip. I did so. Then she talked to my manager. My manager took me into her office and literally shrieked at me until hoarse. I stood my ground and told her that I'm not going to be responsible for FAS. She told me that she was taking me off the calendar until she decided what to do with me. She also informed me that I could get the restaurant in serious trouble for discrimination. And upon examination of my state's laws, she is correct. But when I talked to my mother and father about it tonight, they told me that they understood my position. The entire staff at the restaurant is against me and I think that I'm going to call in and tell my manager that I quit. But I still feel in the right here. I have been with my wife for 10 years now and she always has had this habit of making me look bad with our finances. Whenever anything regarding spending money comes up she will always say how broke we are and she doesn't have the money to do this or buy that. The thing is we are doing well financially. We have decent jobs and combine our salary is roughly $125K /year. As of today our net worth is more than $1 million but less than 2. I had saved / invested a lot before getting married so I gave us a good head start. I control the finances / take the lead, but we both agreed to living a very modest life. We both have our cars from college, for example, Honda and Toyota. She knows everything about our finances because at least once a month I go over it with her every time I deposit money in our investment accounts or our kids' college funds. For banking we have an emergency fund and I budget everything else to go straight into investments. We basically stay right at $10,000 in our bank savings account and $500 in our checking account after bills. Most of the time there is more than $500 in our checkings, but once I pay our CC each month I then move anything extra. We always use the CC so it's not like we only have $500 to spend. Our CC limit is $25,000. A few months ago we had dinner with her friends and they talked buying a new car. My wife said something like, "I wish I could get a new car, but I'm always broke after paying the bills." We still have our college cars. Wife does not want a new car. She will go on to talk about if she had money what she would want to buy, and it always makes me feel ashamed. This "I'm broke" story has been happening for years. When we were driving home I asked her about. She understood we have the money, but it's how she feels because her bank account is always low. I said I can increase our budget or keep more money in our bank if she wants. Since we are doing well, I'm okay with spending more. She said no and again was happy with our finances. I explained that when she says we are broke it makes me look bad and I feel ashamed. It's as though I can't provide for the family and / or I am bad with money. She doesn't see it that way. The same conversation has come up numerous times about us being broke. Recently, I reminded her numerous times it makes me feel and look bad in front of friends and family. I told her if she keeps saying stuff like that I will reveal that we are doing well with money. I gave her a few reminders I'd eventually do this, but she kept going with the "I'm broke" story. At a dinner with her sister and parents the same "I'm broke" story came up. I piped in and said, "It's weird to hear a millionaire say they are broke." My wife said, "I'm not though." And I quickly say, "We are millionaires and you know that. We go over our finances every month." Well, the "I'm broke" story stopped after that and the night went on as usual. A little later the same thing happens with her friends and I use the same line. Now my wife is mad at me for using that line and revealing roughly how much money we have. She said it seems like I'm gloating. I say it's better than making me look like I'm running us into the ground financially. I'm pretty open to us spending money and I don't restrict her spending. She has the CC to spend money monthly. Most of the month we have far more than $500 in our checking, but I move anything above to our investments. Once I pay the CC every month, I know I won't have any big expenses then. If I do, we have the CC limit and the $10,000 emergency cash. We live on a really cheap area and had a low cost of living. We never felt RHE need to upgrade until we wanted to start having kids. I didn't have to change our lifestyle much to save a lot. My job is in demand and pays well because nobody wants to live out in my area. So after expenses I take home a lot more than I would living in a major city. Probably 3 to 4 times more net savings annually if I had to guess. She doesn't want a new car and has told me that multiple times. She doesn't like driving and feels comfortable with her current car. She doesn't know what she wants to do when she retires. I know I'll be golfing, games, and eating edibles most days. I don't do any of this much now because we have kids and they will be my focus for a long time. I maybe golf 1 or 2 times a month AMD, that's the only times I take edibles. I'll speak more with my wife about this. I think she may not feel like it's her money since she never saved much before we got engaged.